Good morning. If you're kind enough to take your seats, we should be getting started, kicking off with the first point in the order of the day. I understand we have a very busy day today, including a coordinators meeting by 12:30, but we also have a hearing, a special hearing on media freedom from 9:45 onwards, and we're having a vote at 3 p.m. So I think, having given some minutes of courtesy for the members which are willing to be part of this first point of the order of the day to be here in the room, we should get started by adopting the agenda and going right away to point number 11, which concerns the presentation of the annual report on the situation of the asylum in the European Union, activities of EASO, European Asylum System Office, by the Executive Director of this office, Mr. Robert K. Visser. We understand that this report, this annual report, which happens to be the third, was adopted by the EASO Management Board on June 19 this year, and in accordance to the EASO regulation, this annual report is the grounds for a work program translating the organization's strategy into annual objectives and providing the basis for budgetary planning. So let's hear the presentation of this third work program for EASO, and then opening some floor for discussion with the members. Mr. Visser, you're most welcome, and you've got the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure and honor for me to be here today again, and I thank all of you for the invitation. On the agenda, as the Chairman just mentioned, is the first annual report of the EASO. We started last year, so this report on the year 2011 is the first one and not even the full one, because I was appointed only at the 1st of February last year, so it's covering the months that I was in action. And that's why I understand the request of your committee to also refer to the 2012 activities and the work program 2013. That is already the third program that has just been sent to your committee as well. As I said, EASO has been set up last year, so we're now 1.5 years of operations. And let me briefly point out to you what the results and activities are. We have 3 lines of support: permanent support, special support, and emergency support. That sounds all very logical, and it is very logical. Let me briefly touch upon it, but first set out the other items I will touch on. The second one after the line of support is early warning, and the third one is the external dimension and resettlement. The 3 lines of support. Most important in maybe all the work we all do, but certainly in the area of asylum and the convergence in the area of asylum and migration, is giving us a permanent basic fundament in all the member states and all the operations. That's why we concentrate on giving training, organizing training sessions, train-the-trainer sessions, and also organizing and setting up modules, learning modules, so that everywhere in the European Union the people on the ground are trained in the same way and on the basis of the same training material. All in all, we have already been able to perform a large number of sessions. For next year, we foresee more than 1 training session every month, between 14 and 16 in total. apart from specific training sessions for judiciary and for situations like in Greece. Second, we concentrate on providing basic documentation. COI reports, country of origin information, is the essence of every asylum decision, and the ambition of the ASO, the ambition of the agency is to come to a common asylum COI report on the main countries of origin. We published mid this summer the first report on Afghanistan. A second one will be published hopefully next month, and we planned next year a number of reports to continue. Those are the two pillars of the permanent support. Then we have the emergency support, the ambulance, so to say. That is what we have been doing and being active in Greece already from the first half of last year. And over that period, we have been able to support the Greek authorities setting up the 3 asylum services that they have foreseen in their law. Over 30 asylum teams have been active up till now. We have sent in a number of our own experts, resulting in training of all the staff for the new services. We have a full training program ready as soon as the Greek authorities have appointed more staff. We have provided COI reports, COI fact sheets, COI training, manuals for the reception centers, setting up reception centers, special training and special handbooks for vulnerable groups, for unaccompanied minors, and training for specific skills in the asylum process. And I could mention more, but I will not at this moment. Thirdly, the specific support, that is the tailor-made support for countries that are not under particular pressure but have a certain situation that needs specific attention. That can go from the subject of relocation, well known in this room, to specific support on the asylum process, the chain of asylum partners in the process of deciding on asylum. Those 3 elements are the main pillars of the ASO support: permanent support, special support, emergency support. Apart from that, we have engaged in early warning system. Early warning system because if you want to provide the correct and the most useful support to member states, then you need to have a system where you can support as soon and as adequate as possible. That system is in the making and happily coincides with the discussion also here in your Parliament about Article 31 of the Dublin Regulation. We are combining the two. I realize fully that Article 31 and the Dublin Regulation are not yet in force. We are building up our own early warning system, already keeping in mind that it might provide a happy combination. Early warning is essential for scoping what is happening in the outside world and what the changes of influx are in the European Union as a whole. That is new. So far that was not an online activity for anyone in the EU. But secondly, it's very important and providing interesting information on having a good view on what the capacities in the member states itself are. And by having those 2 assessments at the same time, what's the change outside in the European Union and what is the situation in the member states, we can combine and see what imbalances at a certain moment can occur and where we can assist and support. Last but certainly not least, the external dimension and resettlement. That is one of the main items in the regulation as well. Due to the setup phase and due to the budget restrictions, we can only pay limited attention to this, as the other basic support, as the other basic lines of support are of the primary importance. I stated before in this room one of the ambitions I have with the agency, that is not only providing practical cooperation, providing support to member states, but also providing bottom-up and evidence-based information into the policy process. Last year and this year we have been able to do that already in two places. One is the early warning. With the information and with the experience we have in the early warning, so far we were able to provide the policy process with experience in the direction and hopefully contributing to the Dublin II regulation and its final form. And second, on relocation. Relocation is a subject that is highly political. I realize that in the full, but in this process we have been able to make an evaluation of the Yiruma 1 project, the Yiruma 2 project, and the bilateral projects between individual member states and Malta, and to draw from that the experiences and the evidences just by putting the facts and figures in one report, and in this way bottom-up providing information. To finalize, Mr. Chairman, the setup phase is not entirely finalized, but we're already full-fledged working on the majority of all the tasks that are in the regulation. We have made tremendous steps forward, also comparing to the projects, the individual projects that were at certain areas like training. And I think that it is a consolidated organization by now. I have to do that within a situation of austerity. I fully understand that, and I work to comply to that. And at this moment, I would very much like to thank the LIBE committee for their support on the budget, for the amendments that you voted on. It's a pity that it was probably not to the full extent will be accepted in the end, but I very much feel supported by the committee. At the same time, having a more limited budget at the horizon, you will understand that I have to make priorities as well. And that means that also in 2013, EASO will not be able to fulfill all the tasks according to the regulation. That is a great pity. That is something I'm not happy with. But I think that there is a balanced choice in what we do, and the primary things need the primary attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Visser. Now, before we can hear something from the members willing to contribute, maybe the Commission would like to say a word. Mr. Owl, representing DG Home, is in the room, I understand. Yes, please. You have a minute.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We are constantly cooperating very closely with EASO, between the Commission and EASO, and so we self-evidently also subscribe to the annual report, and we are grateful for it. As all first-time reports, there is, of course, room for improvements, and we will cooperate with EASO to include certain aspects in the second version, which is coming up next year. I can already point at one important issue. We have already discussed with EASO that to find an operational solution in order to coordinate next year the Commission annual report and the EASO annual report, which would facilitate having a common EU-wide message on such a sensitive topic as asylum is. This outline solution was adopted by the Management Board of EASO together with the annual report, so there will be more coherence between both reports next year. Since you referred also to the year 2013, let me just point out that from the perspective of the Commission, EASO will have a very central role with regard to a coherent implementation of the new asylum acquis, this with regard to training and the exchange of views with national experts. It will be key, if the new asylum system shall become a success, that there is a coherent implementation among member states. And secondly, what is very important for us also in the upcoming years is that EASO will provide important information to allow for a coherent monitoring. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you for having made your point. Now let's open some floor for the members. We get started by Mr. Busuttil.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to Mr. Visser, to the Director of EASO. And let me start by wishing him well for his work. Mr. Visser, you know that the European Parliament has been very active in promoting the regulation that established your office. I am glad to see now that you have moved to your new premises. I have not had the opportunity to attend the opening ceremony, but I understand that it went well, so I congratulate you on moving to your new premises, which should enable you now to become a fully fledged and fully operational office as soon as possible. You also know that the European Parliament has and continues to support your office even from a budgetary point of view. You mentioned the word austerity, but we have kept that word out of the way as far as EASO is concerned. And as you know, this committee in particular has made it clear that it wants to support your office with the full financial requirements that are necessary to make it fully operational. We will continue to pursue this for as long as is necessary to make sure that EASO is in a position to deliver. Now, Mr. Visser, one of the recent initiatives approved by this committee and by this House is the Triantafilides report on solidarity amongst member states. This is a groundbreaking report, not only because it speaks solely on solidarity, an issue that has been put on the table by the European Parliament for a number of years now, but it focuses on it exclusively and it brings out concrete proposals as to how to take this forward. It also makes reference, amongst other things, to the issue of supporting relocation of beneficiaries of international protection within the European Union. And this is the specific question that I would like to ask you, Mr. Visser. You know that Article 5 of your regulation makes it very clear, a clear responsibility of your office to support, indeed even to promote, facilitate and coordinate activities related to relocation within the European Union. So this is a very clear task that your office has, and I would really expect EASO to put it on itself, to take it upon itself, to promote, facilitate and coordinate activities in relation to relocation within the European Union. I regret that there has been very little talk about this, even from EASO, and I hope that EASO could be proactive in this regard and not wait from the Commission, and certainly not wait from the Member States. If EASO is going to wait from the Member States to move on relocation, then I can assure you, sir, that it will never move. The Commission, too, has already committed, as early as the hearing of the Commissioner in 2009, that it is in favour of a permanent mechanism for relocation, and yet we still do not have this proposal on the table. Now, EASO has a clear mandate in Article 5 of the regulation, which binds it to promote, facilitate and coordinate activities in relation. So my question to you is, what precisely is EASO doing to to fulfill its obligations under Article 5. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Busuttil. Señora Romero.
Gracias, Presidente.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. I'd like to thank Dr. Visser for his presentation. It's a real shame that we only got the documentation today, so I wasn't able to take a look at it. And when we got your conclusions, or the conclusions you drew today, they weren't particularly explicit. So I would like to see what the conclusions of the report are, because as Mr. Busuttil said, there's a great deal of responsibility here in trying the regulation, and we'd really like to know what solutions you can come up for. There are many thousands of asylum seekers in Malta, Greece, and many other places, and their situations haven't been resolved. I must say that in our recent trip to Greece, well, we only got one representative from EASO who came to talk to us, and from what they said, it's clear that there are issues of funding for EASO, and obviously it falls to us to act as well, and we have used the entirety of the budget which is assigned to this matter, but we haven't been able to tackle the problem. As you say, with the ESO, the question of asylum does cost money. And the money is not always directed to the necessary ends. We do have some responsibility here. There's alert, the alert system. This is particularly important, especially when it comes to detention. We don't want people in appalling conditions for 3 months, for 6 months, even if they are going to be sent back. I mean, the dignity of the human person is of paramount importance here, and some of the situation, the conditions that we saw really were terrible. I mean, there were 2 centres in Greece which were closed, 2 centres, and I haven't visited others myself, but I think that we're going to have to close others in other countries as well, given the conditions. And perhaps ESO needs to act here as well, because we do need an early warning system to see what's happened with ex-person who is seeking asylum and has not get an answer from the member states. In Greece, it seems to me, I mean, nobody seems to know whether they're talking about 27,000 or 50,000 people, and the changes which are coming into force and new laws in Greece, well, we still don't know what figures we'll be looking at, but we cannot detain asylum seekers for years without giving them an answer. So tackling this is absolutely essential for now. For us as MEPs, we also have to list this amongst our priorities. We have to look at what's being done in Greece by EASO and whether their actions are suitable, because it really is, they play a pivotal role, and they have a responsibility to play in terms of our external policies as well. In this chamber, in the council, if we don't take an integrated approach to this issue, we will be able to resolve it, because our relationship with embassies and the situation in third countries, well, these all come into play, and we do need basic replies, basic documentation, all of which is necessary to tackle the problems of these people, which haven't been resolved because the EU doesn't seem to think this is a priority issue. Obviously, we cannot continue to detain these thousands and thousands of people in the conditions in which they're now living.
Now your turn. Please mind the timing, because at 9:45 we should be starting a long media freedom hearing, which is going to be consisting of 3 round sessions of discussion. So let's make it in time. You got the floor, Mr. Wikström.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Visser, for your presentation and for the program that we have been provided with. Since I am the rapporteur for the recast of the Dublin II regulation, I will specify my question related to this dossier, and especially to Article 31 that you have already touched upon in your intervention. As we all know, Article 31 of an early warning mechanism in the Dublin regulation is designed in order to discover flaws and shortcomings in the national asylum systems before they develop into crises. In other words, this is our tool to avoid another situation emerging, another Greece, in other words, where the asylum system has collapsed more or less. The EASO and the Commission are given the key roles in this mechanism in order to monitor and to give recommendations to Member States. In the negotiations and construction of this article, there was a lot of focus on Member States under particular pressure. But from the Parliament side, it was very important that this mechanism will monitor all Member States and not only the ones facing particular pressure. In other words, not only the southern Mediterranean Member States. There might be other shortcomings in other Member States as well. And since the Dublin system is based on the idea that the asylum system must provide the same guarantees for asylum seekers in all Member States, and therefore we need a careful and ongoing monitoring of all Member States. I also read in the EASO work programme for 2013 about your intentions with the early warning system. And my question to you is if you consider that you have the sufficient resources, financial and human, to fulfill the huge task that are given to you according to Article 31, given the austerity during these difficult days that you are facing. Furthermore, I would like to hear you maybe elaborate a little bit on your possibility of monitoring all Member States and not only those on the southern Mediterranean borders. And I would also like to listen to you if you can foresee any problems with the Member States' willingness to cooperate and give you the data that you request, as well as their willingness to draw up a prevention action plan when recommended. And finally, if there are any other problems that you foresee, it would be interesting to get your view on that. Thanks.
Oh, thanks. Mr. Triantafylidis.
Thank you very much, and thank you to Mr. Visser for his speech earlier on, but also for what his office is actually doing on the field of asylum. I had the chance to visit the offices in Malta and have a very good discussion with the director there, and I am really very satisfied for the work that they are doing, because I have seen the results of this work in our visit to Greece only last week. Of course, there is a lot of more things that can be done, but one can sense a satisfaction from the Greek authorities that they had the help they needed from EASO in order to implement certain very important policies in the field of asylum. And they are expecting, of course, much more help in setting up and implementing the new service on asylum, which, even though it's almost ready, it has not been implemented yet. I joined my voice with Mr. Busuttil's voice earlier on the question of relocation, and I would like to ask the Commission whether they are intending to come forward with a proposal on this question, and whether they are thinking also about the distribution key. From Mr. Visser, I would like to hear a little bit more about the evaluation of the Yiruma project and the Yiruma 2 project, how they are going to proceed on that question. I find very interesting the information they give on certain specific issues, such as the country of origin, which is very useful for helping the authorities in deciding on asylum cases. And I wish them well in what they are doing, waiting to see more practical results on the field. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bronx.
A number of questions. I have asked these of various people before, but never really got a satisfactory answer. What proportion of asylum seekers claim to have been singled out for ill treatment in their country of origin, and what proportion are claiming asylum simply because they come from countries that are dangerous or oppressive of the population generally? Secondly, what proportion of those claiming asylum are refused asylum status? Thirdly, is there a check on the number of failed asylum seekers who return to their country of origin or at least leave the EU? We heard about, I think it was about 3 months ago, from the Executive Director of Frontex, who said that both illegal or irregular migrants and failed asylum seekers were not forcibly removed, but were given a written order to leave the EU, which of course they would obey immediately or not. The representative of the Commission only yesterday said that there had been a shift from what he called obligatory removal to voluntary removal. A final question, do you see any upper limit to the number of asylum seekers coming to Europe, or is there an unlimited commitment to accept all who qualify? A final point, not a question. I'm concerned, we've only had this morning, but I'm concerned really about the number of asylum seekers coming from countries that are undergoing conflicts that have actually been caused or encouraged by Western countries, including the EU, and, I'm ashamed to say, the UK in particular. I'm even more concerned that countries that have now apparently returned to democracy still have many asylum seekers here. If I were a Tunisian running away from the previous dictatorship, I'd be so pleased that democracy had been implanted in my country, I'd want to go back and share it and support it. Apparently 24,000 Tunisians disagree with me. Thank you.
Now, Mr. Visser, your turn to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Allow me to answer the questions by area and subject, because that's maybe more practical. But let me start by expressing once more my great gratitude for the support that this committee in its entirety and in its individual members have shown to EASO on numerous occasions. I just had the visit of a number of you already in Malta, and that also is a sign of positive support that is very important for a young agency to have. The subject you refer to, maybe start with the annual report, which is formally the item on the agenda. I did not go into it very detailed, and I will not now, given the time frame that the chairman indicated, but a few words on it. It is the first annual report. We combined actually two reports. One is the report on the state of asylum in the European Union, and one is the activity report on the EASO activities. In the next year, we will separate the two reports. We will issue the activity report separately as part of the budget accountability, and we will issue a report on the state of asylum somewhere in June next year. That will provide us the possibility to more specifically go into detail and to make a more comprehensive overview of what is happening on the area of asylum. And as Mr. Ull from the Commission already indicated, we will closely cooperate with the Commission to make sure that there are no duplications, that the report from the Commission on migration more in general will fit exactly in the same sequence, or better, that we will fit in the same sequence of the larger report of the Commission. And also the other reports, for example, from Eurostat, we will coordinate closely. That's about the process and the report. Second, a very important point next year will be The asylum package, of course, it still has to be ratified by all partners concerned, but as the state of play is at this moment, we can foresee that on important subjects next year, starting next year, the European framework on migration and asylum will be changed and improved. That means that all the member states will have to implement in the next few years new legislation and new practices on asylum. That is the core task, touching on the core task of the agency, to support member states implementing, organizing, raising quality. Quality is a very important point here. So looking at the budget, looking at priorities, for sure this 2012 asylum package, as it's now called, will be a most important key in deciding what and where to put the priorities for the next few years of the agency. Thirdly, relocation, rightly touched upon by Mr. Busuttil and by some others, a very important subject. That was why we took the initiative to go into, together with the Commission, the evaluation of the Yiruma 1, the Yiruma 2, and the bilateral support systems for Malta. We have finalized that fact-finding report already in mid this year. It has been the subject of consultations and discussions in the last JHA Council 10 days ago in Luxembourg. And the conclusion there is that the Commission will follow up on the subject. Specifically on what EASO will continue to do, because we have already been active, as I explained, in this field, is that we will fully adhere to what the regulation stipulates, that we will promote and facilitate the process of relocation whenever it occurs. At the same hand, and I have to say that to the Honourable Mr. Busuttil as well, I'm very much aware that it is a highly political subject, and that EASO and the regulation of EASO stipulate that it coordinates, but it is not able to take the lead in this. I see enough possibilities already parting from the evaluation that we did, fact-finding that we did for a good role of EASO, and I see acceptance of that good role by member states. At this moment, it is to the Commission to present a proposal on the basis of the discussions on the political level. At the same time and in parallel, EASO will continue to organize its own instruments and its own role in relocation, as it certainly will not be the last chapter on this subject. Greece. Several points were mentioned there. Let me be clear on this from one side. The regulation stipulates that EASO can only support member states on their explicit request. That has been the case with Greece, and since that moment we have supported Greece on all the activities where we could as a starting organization. We are now a fully fledged organization, and we are able to support the Greek building up of their services, 3 services that they built up, to the full, provided that from the Greek side the staff and the resources are in place, which is at this moment not fully the case. That is why these services are not yet operational. But as far as they are ready, I can say they are now EU-proof in all their aspects. We have trained all the staff of the new services. We have given them management support. We have provided them with handbooks, guidelines, internal instructions, special attention and special training for vulnerable groups and unaccompanied minors, management of reception centers. So in that sense, the new services are prepared, and I'm convinced that they are at a good level. The second big problem in Greece is, apart from the transition, the backlog. There was reference made to it. The backlog in Greece is substantial, even far above substantial, and it's important for new services not to start with a big backlog. That is why UNHCR and EASO are sharing together a project. I hope to be able to decide it one of these days, to embark on a project concentrated on tackling the backlog. That will support Greece, that will support the decision for the new services to get started. Early warning, very important point, Article 31. EASO and the Commission in a key role in this, EASO in the starting up, in the making the picture, so to say, the assessment, the monitoring of what is the situation. A few specific points from my side. I fully agree that it should be a monitoring of all the member states. That's a very vital and essential point, because if you want to be prepared, and in the end early warning is to be prepared. It's not a punishment system. Some people look at it as it's the first step for infringement. No, it's not. It has nothing to do with infringement. It is to have an early warning, to be prepared, to have the time to prepare. And that is true for all the member states. One specific example, beginning of this year, I got a warning system, a warning signal from Luxembourg of all countries. One you might not have expected. I did not expect it. But they were in serious problems. Sudden rise, sudden problems. So it is not about the Mediterranean. It is not about the East. It is about all the member states. Is that difficult? Yes and no. It is not difficult because everybody understands that you have to cooperate to make it possible to have the right picture. And the right picture might be the picture that helps your neighbor, but as we are a European Union that has open frontiers, open borders, what happens in the next country can directly influence your own country. So if you don't provide and they don't provide, then we will not have that early warning system. It's not only about giving your own information, it's about making one piece of the puzzle to finally have the full picture. But it certainly will, at moments, give rise to discussion. That's only to be tackled. Are we sufficiently prepared to do what we have to do? At this moment, I think that we can make the start of this system. We are working on it. We're devoting people and we're devoting budget on it. But it is a very intense project. If you really want to monitor the situation in the member states in such a way that you can not predict, because predict is a too heavy word, but that you can indicate and make a trend analysis and a risk analysis in a solid way, then probably you need dedicated and specialized staff for that. Staff is more important maybe than the budget resources in itself. Dedicated staff is what really is essential here. So I might come back on this subject when we have more experience in building up. I see a very serious.
We have a hearing by 9:45, and it's going to take more than 2 hours.
maybe then just one point, if I may, that is on the asylum proportions that were mentioned in the end, and is there an upper limit to asylum seekers? The European values that we all cherish are such that there are no limits, no formal limits to humanity. Thank you very much.
Mr. Visser, we thank you for your presentation, for your effort to reply carefully the questions that have been made, and particularly for making it fast, considering that we have a timing, as I said, right at the outset of this ordinary meeting of the LIBE Committee, because we should be getting started with our media freedom hearing anytime now. So we thank you for being here, and we're looking forward to seeing more of you. All the best.
Thank you.